Hi, everybody. My name is Niall Gallagher. I'm the Managing Director of Citco Trustees Cayman. Came up from Cayman Islands on Sunday night. It's lovely to be here. Um, my team in Dublin, sorry, I worked in Dublin before I moved to Cayman. My team in the Cayman Islands is primarily a team that looks after high net worth families and individuals and family offices, providing trust services and family office support services.
Afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Simran Sandhu. I am an Executive Vice President at Citco Fund Services. My role here is building new products, new revenue services, finding new frontiers. I focus on the institutional services segment. And as a part of it, we are also looking at family offices. How do we grow this growing segment? Briefly on Citco, while we're waiting for the panel questions, we are a third generation family owned business. We have been serving families, asset managers, and asset owners for over 75 years. Currently, we service 2.3 trillion in assets. Our main operations are back office and middle office services. We have 14,000 employees globally across 50 locations.
So I think I heard the questions. So we're going to fire away. Tell me about the landscape for family offices today, and where you see it.
I'll start out by saying, if you look at the family office segment, it's bigger than alternatives at this point. It's bigger than hedge funds. It's a segment that we think it's going to continue to grow. And I would say 1 in 4 family offices were formed in the last 10 years. What we are seeing within our book is a lot of sophistication that family offices are now bringing to the table. It is a segment that's looking more and more like a multi-asset institutional client. So what comes with multi-asset is a lot of operational complexity. So I would say that's a theme that I would like to touch upon as we go on with this panel.
Yeah, and for me, one of the things that we notice quite strongly is as Simran has mentioned, the strong growth in family offices. We see people setting up a family office of all shapes and sizes. There's lots of discussions that go on around that. Whether people are going for a single family office or multi-family office, and the move from one to the other depending on the needs of each family. And then kind of the geopolitical perspective in the last couple of years has also been a kind of a focal point for us, where we see family offices moving away from hubs that they may have been traditionally established in, and kind of a strong focus now on the Middle East. In the Cayman Islands itself, I would see a lot of family offices coming in, establishing down there, just as a kind of a nice jurisdiction to live in for one, but also with the breadth of experience from the professionals that are down there. So yeah, lots going on in the family office space from our perspective.
So you hear quite frequently about the rags to riches to rags sort of discussion, as well as just tax complexity for family offices, and also inflation tends to run high. So can you talk about some of the challenges around wealth preservation?
I would say the stat that perhaps most of you know in the family office segment is 70% of the wealthy families lose their wealth by the second generation and 90% by the third generation. And a lot of it, if you dig into it, is perhaps more around the notion of not being strategic, procrastination, pushing things and not really planning for it. So that's something we are seeing, and that's where we step in as Citco Fund Services, looking at families and saying, hey, you should be looking at a trusted partner that can help you find that transparency that will be meaningful as you move forward. A lot of the complexity we are seeing with families is not about making good decisions, but it's really about aligning around those decisions. Families, there's intergenerational wealth that's been talked about ad nauseum, I would say, for the past 2 decades now that I've been in this space. But we do know we are going digital. The world's becoming more digital. We've seen presentations today that talk about we are in Web3 and what would that mean for economy as a whole. And we are seeing that within the family office segment as well, right? The younger generation, they do see everything being digital. They are going into illiquids. So what does that mean when it comes to managing a complex illiquid portfolio?
Do you have any comments on that or no? Great. So can you talk about the complexity of the family offices these days and what you're seeing? I mean, we've always seen cross-jurisdictional and then there's a multi-generational. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I suppose on the multi-generational side, when we see the wealth moving between the generations, the breadth of control can spread within the family office. You see a lot of issues coming up, topical issues that can cause kind of division and controversy. So careful management of the actual family itself, the values that the family holds dear, kind of values that maybe differing people within the family have, and having supports and professionals in place at all different levels of the family structure to actually support the decisions that need to be made.
Great, interesting. So can you talk a little bit about how you see portfolios evolving? What does Citco see on their side? How does that add to that complexity?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Family offices are becoming bigger and bigger, right? When we look at the segment in the clients we tend to take, we are looking at double-digit billions that family offices are managing, and these are single-family offices. Well, we are noticing that these books are becoming increasingly complex. They are being managed like an institutional quality portfolio. These portfolios are increasingly being skewed towards illiquids. There are a lot of funds in there, funds of, I would say, all asset classes when it comes to hedge funds, private equity, and all the sub-asset classes within the private asset space. And then, of course, with that complexity of being in illiquids, which is really a paper-based asset, that's what I call it. There is no digital trail that comes in. You're not getting a data feed from an exchange. Everything now needs to be managed from paper to how do you make this paper trail into digital. That's the first piece of complexity we are seeing is in terms of the operational complexity of taking a paper-based asset and making it more of a digital asset for managing your book. The second piece I'll touch upon, which some of the speakers talked about today, is around the notion of liquidity. Family offices are certainly managed differently, unlike an endowment fund, right? But we are seeing this need for how do we give tools to our asset owner clients that can help manage their portfolio liquidity? When we see our clients, which are in a multi-asset book, let's say hedge funds and private equity, there is this need of, okay, where am I going to get liquidity from? Which hedge fund am I redeeming? What's my cheapest way to redeem? What's the fastest way to redeem? And if you look in the market, a lot of these complexity needs are being managed on Excel. I love Excel, but certainly not the most robust tool out there. So I would say as portfolios skew towards illiquids and more alternatives, there's a need for better liquidity management and certainly liquidity in the very complex world we live in where who knows when do you have to flee a country.
Do your solutions also have planning components to them so people know what they do, get liquidity on one thing, they can move into the next thing, or how does that work?
Our tools are focused more on the back office and middle office. So certainly we are not offering a universe of investable managers. So not a due diligence type of a tool, but more if this is a book that you own, you can certainly have a sense of where would you get liquidity from in the cheapest and the fastest way possible. We do find a lot of our clients subscribe to third-party tools, which give them access into what an investable universe could look like, where would be potential managers and all that.
So there's kind of an arms race going on with respect to technology. Can you talk about the, where technology is today and how far it's come and where it's going?
Yeah, for us, it's still about managing private information, personal data. So all of the data security, the cyber security that goes on around that. That's one of the things that are kind of most important to us from the kind of family security perspective, and making sure that kind of information is kept safe. And then onto the investing side, Simran.
Um, so Citco, because we're a back office, middle office service provider, we do have a mix of third-party technology solutions as well as proprietary solutions that we develop in-house. When it comes to looking at the family office segment, I'll touch on some of the complexity that I'm seeing besides just the portfolio. When we have multiple beneficiaries invested in a family office, there's also this need of, I'm not looking to get a statement by a legal entity. I'm looking to understand holistically, what do I own across portfolios? And what we find, there's very little third-party technology that can help beneficiaries get that understanding of what do they own holistically. And as I mentioned, illiquids also create this problem of what do you really own? If you're getting access to illiquids through a third-party manager, you don't have a sense of what does the manager own. You'll probably get a schedule of investment every now and then. They'll give you a sense of these are the sectors you're invested in, these are the geographies you're invested in. But getting that holistic exposure thematically, that's still hard to get, and there are not a lot of third-party technologies that help that. You can certainly subscribe to like a Burgess feed. That'll give you a sense of, okay, this is the look through. But it's certainly a problem that's growing within this segment of investing in illiquids, and we are trying our best to help our clients manage that. And I would say it goes back to the original problem that I mentioned, that illiquids, the private asset space is still very manual, very paper-based, and it creates these whole slew of issues that are adding to the operational complexity.
So how does this tool set that's evolved over time help out with succession planning, which is becoming such a big issue? Boomers are retiring, people are aging out. There's, I don't know how many trillions of dollars are going to the next generation. Can you talk about that? Succession planning?
Succession planning in terms of
What you guys do and what the family offices face.
okay, yeah. So for us, we on the trustee and family office support side, we are really implementing the advice that we get from trusted advisors, lawyers, tax advisors. So the most important thing for us in assisting a family office and acting as trustee, where we're a professional trustee, is actually making sure that the families are well advised, looking at all aspects of the beneficiaries' lifestyles, where they live, how often they're living in certain jurisdictions, marital status, their plans down the line. We have to think about all of the tax implications from that, particularly with CRS and FATCA. So yes, kind of taking good advice, and there's plenty of people in the room today have been talking about various issues, and certainly taking that good advice first of all.
I think that once you get past the entrepreneur stage where somebody has had great success and they have a liquidity event or they have family, it becomes distributed around the world. That's pretty common actually. And then you have, people who have capital in Europe bringing their capital to the United States. I mean, how do you guys get involved with these international families it's pretty complicated regulatory environment. How do you deal with them?
Yeah, so we're kind of long-term partners. We see ourselves as long-term partners. So typically where we're getting involved, it's with the original wealth creator themselves. We would find that they're very much hands-on in the decision making. They know quite well what they want. They've taken good advice and they come to it. Once you get to the kind of the liquidity event and you're dealing with the next generation, things get a lot more complex from our perspective. Kind of different people want different things. Their risk appetites are different. So a lot of considerations for us. Simran, do you have any kind of thoughts on that from an investing point? Because at that point, we're kind of moving into a more professionally managed portfolio of wealth.
I think the complexity we see is around the fund structures, right? The fund structures are certainly plotted to make the most of the tax rules and regulatory rules across the world. And these family offices are, I would say, these family members are very cosmopolitan as well, right? With multiple citizenships. So there is this notion of, okay, what's the ideal structure, which does add to the complexity again, because you want a holistic statement, right? If you have complex family office structures, those become really hard for us to service. And we are seeing increasing complexity in that space. So we don't do advisory. I would say we offer guidance in that space in terms of what would be ideal fund structures for family offices to have without adding any unnecessary complexity. Because in some cases, we do find there's just unnecessary complexity being injected in there. How do you simplify it? Because down the road, it will be just untenable to get a good sense of transparency in the portfolio.
I know we talk a lot about, maximizing wealth, and everybody thinks the more money you have, the fewer problems you have, but actually they're just different problems, right? So, how do you balance wealth preservation with family harmony? I mean, you always hear about next gen, and they have all kinds of recriminations for the existing gen, and they say, well, I want XYZ amount of money so I can invest in my favorite nonprofit, fix the world, etc. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so obviously a strong kind of family charter, strong set of kind of governance principles guiding the family, all help with that. Education, education, education. You want to make sure that kind of as the next generation is coming through, that they understand the value of what they had, how hard the work was put into to actually create the value in most cases. Not to kind of squander it, that it's something, it's a legacy that they're kind of custodians of throughout their lifestyle and their lifetime, and they should be passing on what they've kind of received, and with added value in between. Of course, everybody does want to have their say, and again, coming back to the fact that people have values close to their heart. So when you start looking at the philanthropy side, certain causes are going to be more important to certain members of the family. That all needs to be balanced out as well. So there's quite a number of factors that need to be considered, and having open, transparent, and frank discussions with the family, and making sure everybody knows kind of the values that they have, that they feel like their voice is heard within the family, obviously can kind of lead to more harmonious family relationships.
To that more from a portfolio transparency perspective, right? Just extending that notion of how do you get that trust, that harmony by knowing where's the money being invested? Is it being invested based on people's values, the impact they want to have? So having a third party that gives you access to your portfolio transparency, your wealth transparency is meaningful, because wealth is great. We all like money, certainly, but when rubber hits the road, it's really family values, that harmony in the family that really matters, right?
So I know it's hard to remember, but there used to be a time when we used to get everything in paper, and your kids didn't publish everything about your private life on the internet. So what role does technology play in family office management? How do you balance digital transformation with all the cybersecurity issues, which just seem to be enormous?
With everything going digital, there is this risk of cybersecurity, of course. I forget the incident that happened, I think this week, about, data disclosures, but they certainly happen all the time. When it comes to Citco, I would say a lot of managers and asset owners use us for that very reason, right? We have technology. We use Amazon Web Services. That's our main provider. So having that security and safety of a third party with expertise in managing that is meaningful. It takes away the stress, the overhead of managing these issues, which certainly we are not experts at everything, but using an expert in this case is I cannot stress that enough.
So I guess in the family office realm, there's been a greater movement towards radical transparency. Can you guys talk about the yays and nays, the pros and cons, and also, you know, how you offer alternatives to that, or you offer that as well?
More from portfolio, and then of course the investor statements, the beneficiary statements. So our value add to family offices is really along the lines of, we'll give you radical transparency in the portfolio that your family is invested in. We'll give you access to holistic reporting so you know what you're invested in across legal entities. And this would go down to the beneficiary statements as well. I think knowing where the money is meaningful, and having transparency on that is meaningful.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not sure I can add too much to that. Yeah, everybody likes to know where they stand in terms of their wealth and keeping families well informed. Making sure that yeah, that the information is safe though is also paramount. So while radical transparency is great, it needs to be carefully managed. So yeah, be careful.
Yep. So, you know, I just want to bring up, so the founder of Telegram, I think he's worth $14 billion, and he just announced that he's going to leave all of his money equally to his 100 kids. They apparently has 100 kids in 100 countries. And that's really intriguing, is I guess they're going to be some of the richest guys in their countries when they grow up, right? So how do you handle these multi-generational family offices and their unique issues as they struggle to preserve wealth?
Right.
How do you handle multi-generational family offices and their wealth preservation efforts? Right. And I will give a little bit of a description here. I think the record is about 80% of the next gen fire their money managers, right? So
Yeah, the stats are the stats are quite high. It comes down to open communication again. I can't emphasize strong enough how important it is to kind of be open and communicative. You need also to kind of build good interpersonal relationships with your family, and make sure that you're kind of on trend. I mean, like, people don't want to be associating with their parents. That's completely natural. You kind of develop your own friendships throughout college. Equally, I would say that while you might be quick to fire kind of advisors from a previous generation, you want to be equally as quick to fire people of your own generation if they're not up to the job, and not kind of just progressing with people that are maybe underperforming. So carefully measuring performance,
right?
yeah, of your advisors, yeah, and not being afraid to look after your own interests.
It's intriguing because I always think that the person who's the entrepreneur, it's his blood, sweat, and tears. You know, they earn and create the wealth,
Yeah,
and they understand the severity of what can happen to wealth quickly, right? Because they've probably seen it over the years, and then the next generation comes up, they haven't had that experience, and then they have whoever is whispering in their ear. So
absolutely. And again, it comes back to education. You need to make sure that kind of you're bringing this next generation up with the right attitude, that they understand the responsibilities that they're taking on.
But if you have a good asset manager, and you're like a Citco, and you're administering the capital, and you understand, you know, everybody has the same sheet to look at in terms of where things are, you get a better assessment.
Yeah.
That's where the clarity comes in.
Yeah, I would say maybe if we draw a parallel to the private equity managers, right? 50% of them are still self-administered, right? And do you want to invest with a private equity manager who's not using a third party? And so extending that concept to family offices as well, right? Wealth, as I mentioned, is fleeting. It's really about the harmony that you want, and then also what's the impact and the legacy that you want to have on the world. And it's easier to have that if there's transparency.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. Well, listen, are there any questions from the audience or about wealth transfer, family office, capital administration, things like that? Why don't you guys give some final statements and parting thoughts? So,
Say my parting thoughts would be, find a partner that's going to help you grow and take away your stress.
Yeah, and kind of open communication with amongst the family. I always say it's kind of one of the biggest issues that we face. Certainly within my team and my area of the business.
It's just remarkable because we're kind of living like in this space age of technology, but it also has the same problems that the space age delivers you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say maybe if I can add to it, it's mind-boggling the challenges we still have within the portfolio complexity, right? That we haven't been able to solve, and partially the credit goes to this rise of illiquids that's adding to it. But it's quite simple problem in the grand scheme of things.
Well, as you can see from the earlier panels, liquid private equity is not something people are looking upon very favorably right now. So, and we think the solution is the family offices should really look at direct investing and how to administer that with the help of people like yourselves.
Marty, I would add there's another challenge as well, right? Finding the right CIO for family offices, because a lot of, I would say, investment officers want to be with institutions. So there's certainly a growing trend with family offices becoming more institutional. How do they find the right talent to manage the money?
That's the hardest part, and agreeing on the talent,
Yes.
right? So, first of all, thanks so much. Just as an aside, we actually had a family office come to us. They were $500 million, and the entrepreneur had managed the money for till he was 75, and then his kid said, "What about our turn?" And so they did a search for a CIO, and they had 30 people come, and everyone that the entrepreneur liked, the kids hated, and they ended up selecting like a 30-year-old, so. So
Did they leave it too late then? Because the succession planning part
it's a
seems to have
succession.
been overlooked and not started early enough. So
It should be started early rather than at the last minute when they're saying, well, I'm 75, it's time for me to get out, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely. It should have been planned out. All right. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much again.